Forge FC is ready for their upcoming match.
Simply stunning stuff! And finally, their goal! My word, what a rocket!
Now, let's get you up to date with Anthony Urciuoli and Match Day Preview on the Forge Audio Network.
Hey, Forge fans, it's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. I am your digital host as we preview Forge FC's upcoming away match against York United Friday night at 7:30. Both clubs hungry for a win. York hasn't won in a while, and they've lost 2 straight. Before that, they had a couple of draws. They had a loss before that. So it's been a while since they've tasted victory. So they're hungry, and they get a visit from their rivals. Forge fans, as we know, travel well. We'll talk about that because I want to hear from the players. I want to hear from Bobby Smyrniotis, the coach. Does it make a difference to have a hometown cheering section there during an away match? Does it really do anything? Does it motivate you as a player? We'll hear from Tristan Borges shortly. We'll hear from Smyrniotis, of course, as well. And we'll talk about the fan traveling in a bit. Before we get there, though, as I mentioned, both teams hungry for a win. Forge FC have lost back-to-back home matches, both 1-0. For a team that was scoring at a ridiculous clip for a while there at 3 goals a game. Okay, we knew that wasn't going to be sustainable, and we've already said it multiple times this season. Things are never as good or as bad as they seem, and they looked bad early. Then they looked really good, and then they've looked bad the last couple of matches, especially when you look at the result. Forge will tell you, though, the chances have been there. That final touch in the final third, that finish just has not been there. Speaking of finish, York is a very fascinating club. By the way, I should just point out, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see my 14-year-old puggle rescue behind me on the couch. She's turning 14 in a couple of days, and I just, she's comfortable. Let's let her enjoy. So that's what's going on in the background there. If you're listening, you can ignore everything I just said because it's irrelevant. Let's go back to York United. I mentioned how fascinated I am by them, and that's because, I love stats. I love advanced stats. York is fascinating. Let me put it to you this way. Their expected goals this season are on 15. Now, that's not overly impressive. It'd be in the bottom half of the league. While expected goals have been 15, they've only actually scored 7. So they're scoring at worse than 50% of what their expected goal rate is. Now, if you're wondering what expected goals, what does that mean? It's the shots, it's the chances that come from dangerous areas that more often than not result in goals. York, for whether it's been bad luck, whether the quality finish just hasn't been there, to have 7 goals when you're expected to score 15, it's a pretty unbelievable number. I mean, everyone's 1 or 2, maybe 3 goals off their expected total. Forge has 20 expected. They've scored 21. So they've scored 3 times as many goals as York has, but it shouldn't, based on the advanced stats, if we're just going by that, it should not be that big of a discrepancy. Now, here's another thing. York is a great 1v1 club. They have guys that can beat you 1v1. In fact, they're one of the best in the league when it comes to just man-on-man, beating your man and getting a chance. Not only are they getting a lot of chances in general and winning their 1v1s, they're winning their 1v1s in the box as well. Again, just now Forge and York play differently. Forge is more of a possession, passing, quick decisions, up-tempo type team. And just looking at the numbers, York is a little more of a 1v1 club. When there's an opportunity to take a man 1v1, they're taking it, and they're very successful at it. In the box, 10 successful 1v1s for York, for Forge 6. Overall, successful 1v1s, 129 for York. That's a tie for, that's just one off the league lead. The leader has 130. So they have 129. Forge is 115. So York can be dangerous 1v1. And, yes, Forge plays differently in their attack, but that needs to be noted. Also, York lead the league in red cards. They have 3. The next closest club, I think it's like a 6-way tie at 1. So York rather has 3 times as many red cards as any other club in the league. Might also explain why they've struggled at points this season to score. I mean, they've been down a man 3 times and three different times this season. Now, here's where the two clubs really do separate themselves. Forge FC, we know how they like to play. They are far and away. Not only do they pass more than anyone else, these aren't just they're successful passes. Forge is better than 85% on their pass completion rate, which is an amazing number. York is at 78. They're second worst in the league. So York is not a club that's comfortable playing that Forge style of possession, up-tempo, quick passing. That's not really their game. Their game is more 1v1, and Forge, of course, knows that going into this match. Let's hear from Forge FC head coach and technical director Bobby Smyrniotis and his thoughts on why there's a discrepancy when it comes to York in how many goals they've scored and how many goals they've been expected to score based on the advanced stats.
Yeah, that one is it's always a tough one because then you're looking at a lot of different metrics and how those expected goals are calculated, where certain shots are coming from or the passes. So that's a long conversation that we can all have a little bit on the side. But York is a resilient team. We can talk about the goals that they haven't scored, but you got to look at also the goals that they don't allow. They're a very well organized team, very robust in the way they defend, and they counter very well. We've also learned in these last couple of games that that can work for some teams. The thing we know though is when Forge and York are playing, it's always an excellent match. There's always good, entertaining football happening on the field. We always try and bring our brand to the match, and I think that's what will make things interesting tomorrow. For them, they've struggled in the last few games, and it's an important game for them, and it's a very important game for us. And I think that's the important thing for both teams on Friday night.
Hey, Bobby, you kind of mentioned it there, but this is the 3rd straight match where you'll probably come up against a side playing in a low block that, might cede possession to you guys. What are the keys to doing things differently in this one to obviously, find the back of the net and maybe create a few more chances than you have over the past few games?
Yeah, we have to be quicker. That's what it has to be. It's not only the last couple of games, but it's many games where we're facing teams that are playing in a lower block a lot more than previous years. And I think we've seen that across the league this year. I think there might be a bigger focus on teams trying to get the 3 points. And it's many times it's easier to do it that way than to be intricate and play a lot of football. That's the toughest way of sometimes doing it. So we either have to be quicker with the ball, or I think there was an episode years ago on The Simpsons where one team was on one half of the field, one team was on the other, and they just passed the ball back and forth, both sitting in a low block, and we see what happens.
Halfback passes to the center, back to the wing, back to the center. Center holds it. Holds it. Holds it.
And we just keep on doing what we have to do and being quick. But I also think, York needs to come out tomorrow and York needs to play. They need to come out and try and find a way to get 3 points. And, maybe that opens up certain spaces. But for us, we're a team that sticks to the principles and the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. We're going to stick to what we do and just keep on doing it.
Amazing. I mean, Bobby never disappoints. Speaking of Bobby, another thing I asked him, and we talked about it off the top, Forge fans travel well when they take on York, and there is a visitors section there that is full of orange. And I talked to Bobby and Tristan Borges and asked them both their perspectives on having your hometown fans at an away match.
Yeah, 100%. Anytime you can get some vocal support at an away match, it makes a difference. And to be honest, our supporters who come down there in the hundreds every game that we've played there, they're vocal. We can hear them. We take their support, and I think it always gives a little bit extra to the team.
I think it's important, especially just kind of being on the pitch. It's nice to kind of have your own crowd there, and especially, having our fans. We're pretty close, to home for a lot of us, right? Especially me. But For us, it's I think a lot of us have been in a lot of pro environments in terms of, having a lot of fans, but I think it's always important to have your home crowd close to you guys. Having them cheer on for us during the whole game. Obviously we hear it, so it's, I think it's really important.
All right, now tickets, by the way, for Forge fans still available to that match at York Lions Stadium between Forge and York United Friday night at 7:30. Before I let you go, let's take a look at the standings. Forge FC, despite their 2-game losing skid, still in 4th place on the CPL table with 17 points. They are 7 points back of Cavalry FC, who are at the top of the table. They're tied with Atletico, but they've played one last match. Speaking of that, Forge does have some ground to make up on, every team. They've played the least amount of games this season. What a difference, by the way. We have to point this out. A club that was playing 2-3 times a week for, almost 3 years is getting, there are these long layoffs. They had 10 days off at one point. There's a 13-day break coming up. You wonder how that's affecting the club. And we may never know for sure how it is because, there's never one reason for anything. York in the 7th spot. They're 1 point out of last place. They've played one last match than FC Edmonton. But they have struggled, and specifically, they've struggled to score goals, but a very good defensive club. They are tied for the league lead when it comes to goals against per match. And it's interesting to point out because Forge, and I believe Bobby touched on it, but Forge has played, I think this will be their 3rd match in a row now where they're going to be playing against that low block with at least 4 guys lined up and just trying to clog the passing lanes and slow Forge down and hope for a mistake and a turnover and a counter. And York, that's going to be part of their game plan. It's worked the last 2 matches against Forge. Now, Forge will say they haven't executed, and they haven't because they've been able to beat that block before. This isn't the first time they've had to face it. But it's hard to, it's really hard to break down. That's why teams use it at all levels. And it's a very popular and it's a very, let's say, efficient way to defend and create turnovers into offense on the counter. So Forge will be playing into those blocks again. And I can tell you, they've been working on it in training for weeks now, breaking down those blocks and finding some windows and some of those soft spots in between coverage. Stage is set. Keep it locked onto the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on YouTube, or you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe both, video, audio, however you want to get your Forge content. It is available to you, and we have some great stuff for you. There is a focus on Forge that is available, but it was recorded on location at Tim Hortons Field during the Forge FC Youth Soccer Skills Clinic, and we spoke to some players who were actually coaches in that setting, and to some of the kids as well, perhaps some future Forge FC players. Also, stay tuned for the 3 keys to the match. Okay, tune into One Soccer to catch Forge FC and York United if you aren't going to be there live at York Lions Stadium. We'll talk to you soon.
Forge FC is prepared, and now you are informed. This has been Match Day Preview with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.